They were thought extinct, relics of a primitive, brutal past. The Galactic Empires, with their fleets of quantum dreadnoughts and clone armies, ruled the stars without question. But when the forgotten war zones reignited, the universe witnessed the impossible. Battle-scarred human soldiers from a lost Earth, walking into the fire with nothing but grit, old weapons, and a reputation that made even empires tremble. The world of Kepler 99X had long since lost any illusion of being a planet. Once lush and mineral-rich, it had been carved open by orbital fire, stripped bare by centuries of industrial greed, and finally left to rot in the cold crossfire of galactic ambition. Now, it served one purpose: to bleed for the empires. Ash drifted like snow over the shattered plains. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning the husks of ancient war machines and the skeletal remains of cities once too stubborn to evacuate. Below them, the Sythari Triumvirate's armored battalions rolled through irradiated corridors of old metro lines, their engines groaning under dust and decay. The Velar Dominion's orbital fleet hung above, silhouetted against a sun dimmed by artificial haze, launching precision strikes at surface positions while keeping their soldiers far from the actual mud. General Tovek of the Velar Dominion stood inside a command dome on an observation deck, watching a holographic projection of the battlefield below. The lines flickered, red for the Velar, blue for the Sythari, and a growing field of gray where no signal returned. That void had expanded overnight. Dead zones spreading, his aide murmured, double-checking a tablet. No comms, no telemetry. Patrols sent and haven't reported back. Tovek's eyes narrowed. Interference? Maybe, the aide replied, tapping. But there's something else. Sythari Recon picked up movement. Unmarked drop ships, ground presence. Not theirs, not ours. Before Tovek could respond, the dome's central feed shifted. A grainy, jittering playback began. It showed a ravaged outpost on Kepler's surface. Wind howled over abandoned turrets and broken antennae. Then, from the edge of the frame, figures emerged, slow, deliberate, wearing bulky, mismatched armor. No insignias, no translation chips. They moved like ghosts. One of them turned toward the drone, helmet scratched, visor cracked, a long, archaic rifle slung over his shoulder. His lips moved. Impossibly, he was speaking aloud. The drone's mic caught fragments. Advanced line, standard sweep, stay tight. The screen cut to static. Playback timestamp, Tovek demanded. 17 hours ago. Tovek stared at the silent void on the map. So who the hell are they? The aide hesitated. The old archive flagged their armor pattern. Designation matches pre-collapse Earth forces. That's not possible, Tovek scoffed. Humans haven't fielded a military in over 600 cycles. The Terran Accord collapsed before the Triumvirate even formed. Exactly, the aide said, which is why the Council thinks it's a fabrication. A myth. Tovek leaned forward. The static on the screen seemed to hum. Down on the surface, Sythari Commander Urstal stalked through a burned trench line, helmet under one arm, plasma pistol holstered. She was tall for her kind, with obsidian black skin and 4 narrow eyes constantly scanning the horizon. Her detachment had just arrived to investigate the dead zone. 3 squads of heavy infantry, drone scouts, and a mech unit. She'd fought rebels, pirates, and even Velar raiders before. None of them ever made her nervous. This silence did. Still nothing from a patrol? She asked. Last signal was 30 minutes ago, her lieutenant replied. They breached the west perimeter. No contacts since. Tal tapped her comm. Deploy the recon drones. Full coverage. Use heat signatures, not AI threat indexes. I don't care if it tags rocks. Just find something. Within minutes, 2 of the drones fed back visual. A crumbled bunker covered in dust, ancient Terran glyphs etched faintly into the exterior. The image zoomed. A boot print. Heavy, wide, distinct tread. Then movement. The feed stuttered as a figure stepped into frame. He wore patchwork armor and a tattered cloak that flapped in the wind. A rifle, primitive by modern standards, hung in his hands, but the way he moved said he didn't need it. The drone auto-flagged the threat level to red and attempted evasive maneuvers. Too late. A single shot rang out. The feed went black. Tal's heart ticked faster. Form a perimeter. Guns hot. No assumptions. Her soldiers moved quickly, securing the trench line. Minutes passed. Then footsteps. Not from a front. From a flanks. Tal turned. Out of the dust walked 5 figures, 2 with rifles raised, one carrying a machine-fed launcher, another crouched low with a knife in hand, and at the front, an older man with a square jaw and a scorched insignia on his chest plate. His armor bore marks of past wars, etched bullet grooves, melted edges, and a bandolier of spent ammo rounds. His eyes, human eyes, were calm, calculating, and utterly without fear. "Identify yourselves," Tal shouted. The old man stepped closer. "Colonel Marcus Rain, Terran Legacy Corps." Tal's jaw clenched. "Impossible." "Yeah," Rain muttered. "I hear that a lot." Then chaos erupted. The soldier with the launcher knelt, firing a shell into the trench wall to Tal's left. Dirt and metal exploded. Her troops scrambled to react, returning fire, but the humans were already moving. The riflemen shifted formation with fluid ease, using debris for cover, cutting down 2 Sythari with precise shots. One soldier sprinted through suppressing fire to pull an injured comrade behind a pillar, applying a tourniquet mid-move. Tal ducked, firing wildly, but saw Rain still walking, calm, unaffected. "This isn't a war zone for you," he called out, voice cold. "You've made it a spreadsheet, a resource projection, a contest of efficiency. You forgot what war really is." Tal growled, trigger intercom, fall back. All units. But Rain was already gone. Above the planet, in orbit, a quiet transmission pinged every major comm network used by both empires. It was short, unencrypted, and broadcast in old Terran standard. "We're awake. We see what you've done. We're coming." Panic bloomed across admiralty boards and field command chains. Who authorized this? Who were they aligned with? Was this a rogue faction, a forgotten relic? Or something worse, something intentional? In a dim conference chamber aboard the Sythari dreadnought Shiver of Night, emissaries from both sides gathered to discuss the anomaly. Tovek stood across from Tal, her expression stone-set, a fresh bandage across her brow. "You saw them," Tovek said. "What did you learn?" Tal didn't blink. "They fight like they've been doing it forever. Not like they want to win. Like they refuse to lose. And they called themselves Terran Legacy Corps." Tovek rubbed his temples. "That's a myth. Old propaganda." "Maybe," Tal said, "but myths don't shoot back." Both fell into silence. Elsewhere, deep in Kepler's ruins, Colonel Marcus Rain surveyed a tactical map burned into the wall of a shattered bunker. Around him, other old soldiers, tired, scarred, determined, sat cleaning weapons and repacking gear. Some had gray in their beards, some had lost limbs long ago and fought on metal replacements. Each of them bore the Terran insignia on their chest, faded but never forgotten. Rain turned to his second-in-command, a grizzled woman with cybernetic eyes. "They're going to come for us." She nodded. "Let them." Rain looked out through the cracks in the bunker, where the horizon smoldered. He could already hear the distant rumble of Empire engines approaching. "They forgot what humanity meant," he said quietly. "We'll remind them." And as the sun dipped behind Kepler's broken skyline, the war, for the first time in centuries, felt real again. The wind screamed over the broken hills of Kepler, 99X, tearing through wreckage and bone, and the dead zone, once dismissed as an anomaly, continued to spread like a bruise across the planet's surface. Neither the Velar Dominion nor the Sythari Triumvirate held ground there anymore. They had tried. Squads sent and vanished. Drones returned scrambled. And always the same grim echo. Old human soldiers, moving with lethal purpose, leaving no survivors and no trace but silence. General Tovek stared at the map in disbelief. What once was a controlled front had dissolved. His analysts updated data feeds every hour, but their confidence waned with each transmission. He'd seen war, command failure, and even mutiny, but never something like this, something ancient clawing its way back into relevance. He closed the data panel, stood from his chair, and called for a direct feed to Central Archive. On the other side of the galaxy, buried beneath a moon-sized station orbiting a red dwarf star, the Dominion's Central Archive responded. A face flickered onto the screen. An archivist, pale, cloaked, his face framed by implants feeding into dozens of ancient servers. "You're requesting Terran military histories?" the archivist asked. Tovek nodded. "Full access. Declassified and redacted entries. Cross-reference Legacy Corps." The archivist paused. "That directive is dormant. Suppressed under Order Pale 13. No one's accessed those records in centuries." "They're back," Tovek said coldly. "And they're not ghosts." Within seconds, the data streamed through. Fragments of video, shattered text logs, battlefield recon from wars long erased from official history. What emerged was not myth, it was doctrine. The Terran Legacy Corps had been Earth's final line during the collapse. As humanity faced annihilation in the AI rebellions and interstellar plagues, this elite division was formed not to win, but to survive. Comprised of soldiers who had lost everything, trained in both high-tech and low-tech warfare, they buried themselves in cryogenic bunkers scattered across key worlds, encoded with a singular activation protocol. Return when peace becomes theater and war becomes forgotten. Tovek's lips tightened. They were never meant to rebuild. They were meant to punish. Meanwhile, Commander Yurztal stood alone inside a darkened command bay on the shiver of night, staring at a weapon fragment recovered from the last failed encounter. The alloy was unfamiliar. Dents marked it where energy weapons had struck and done nothing. She ran her fingers across its worn surface and imagined the soldier who carried it, holding it like an extension of their soul. She was not afraid of death, but something about these humans unsettled her. It wasn't their brutality, it was their purpose. Velar and Sythari soldiers fought because they were ordered to. These humans fought because they chose to. Her comm crackled. "Commander Tal, we've received encoded messages. 3 separate systems, all showing simultaneous human activity. They're coordinating." "Which systems?" she asked. "Garcel, Dalek Prime, and Foreign Spine. Peripheral sectors, all marked as low strategic value." Tal exhaled. "They're not taking key targets. They're testing us." In a makeshift operations chamber deep beneath Kepler's surface, Colonel Marcus Rain stared at a digital map projected onto an improvised table. Each red marker represented a defeated Sythari unit. Each green, a Terran hull point. He looked tired. Not weak, just burdened. Around him, his senior officers stood in silence. One of them, Sergeant Vale, leaned in. "They're reacting slower. Their bots are predictable. Even their elite units follow programmed protocols. They've grown lazy," Rain said. "War has become remote, unfeeling, and they've forgotten what it takes to bleed for a cause." A younger soldier, Evans, spoke up. "But why now? Why us?" Rain didn't answer at first. He ran a gloved hand across his grizzled chin. "Because the galaxy is quiet again. Too quiet. That's when civilizations rot from the top. Someone always needs to remember what war costs. We were the knife they buried in the ground, hoping never to dig it up." Evans looked unconvinced. "And now we're just punishment?" "No," Rain said. "We're memory." Elsewhere in the Velar High Command, panic brewed beneath composed faces. The Empires had always maintained superiority by managing the narrative. Now footage leaked. A Terran team liberating a captured Sythari POW camp. Not to save the prisoners, but to destroy the structure housing it, removing every trace of what had happened there. Rumors spread faster than official corrections. Empire citizens began asking questions. Why were humans fighting like they owned the ground? Why did every strike they make feel personal? In hushed war rooms, analysts debated strategies. Could the humans be bribed? Could they be reasoned with? Others laughed. What could Terrans want? They had no colonies, no fleet, no infrastructure. But Colonel Rain was not waging war for territory. On the 3rd day of the new campaign, Rain's squad intercepted a Sythari transmission requesting truce negotiations. His second-in-command, Major Kale, frowned at the signal as it looped. "It could be genuine," she said. They've taken serious losses. Rain shook his head. They think we're a faction, a tribe. They're still trying to label us because they think understanding us will give them control. Should we reply? Rain stared at the horizon, distant fires painting the sky orange. Not yet. Let them stew. In a bombed-out temple on the edge of the conflict zone, a lone Velar field medic knelt beside a dying comrade. The soldier's breathing was shallow, his chest punctured. No evac was coming. The medic clutched his hand, whispered a prayer, and braced for the inevitable. Boots crunched over rubble. The medic looked up, flinching. 3 figures approached, one in a dark green exosuit, the others bearing rifles. Human. He tensed, raising a shaky sidearm. The lead human stopped, lowering his weapon. Slowly, he reached into his pouch and tossed a ration pack toward the medic's feet. "We're not here for him," the man said, voice gravelly. "He already paid." The medic said nothing. The humans passed without another word. Back aboard the Shiver of Night, Tal watched that same medic's helmet feed. She sat still for a long time, replaying the moment. She didn't understand it. That gesture, mercy, strategy, message? Later, when she convened with Tovek for a secure joint briefing, she brought it up. "They spared one of ours," she said. Tovek didn't look surprised. "They're not here to win. They're here to be remembered." Tal nodded slowly. "And how do we respond to that?" Tovek leaned back. "The way we always do. We panic." 2 hours later, both empires issued a rare joint communique. A ceasefire. A diplomatic summit scheduled aboard a neutral station in orbit over Lyra V, the first cross-faction summit in decades. Rain received the transmission through an intercepted channel. He watched it without emotion, then turned to Kale. "They want to talk." She smiled grimly. "They always do, right before they try to kill us." Rain picked up his helmet, set it under his arm, and stared at the map one more time. His eyes scanned familiar terrain, remembering battles fought long before Kepler, long before the cryo-sleep. "Prep the team," he said. "Let's give them a conversation they won't forget." Outside, the sky burned red with the promise of escalation, and the ghosts of Earth marched on, unyielding, uninvited, and unforgettable. The diplomatic station Lyra V hung in orbit like a skeletal crown, polished metal over ancient scars, a relic of forgotten treaties and forgotten intentions. It was neutral ground only in name. Every surveillance node had been reprogrammed, every corridor cleansed of hidden weapon caches. Still, trust was absent. The two empires didn't share air without suspicion. Commander Yurs Tal arrived first, escorted by a silent triad of Sythari guards. Her ceremonial armor, though battle-worn, had been polished until it gleamed. She walked with practiced poise, but her 4 eyes flicked over every shadowed corner of the reception hall. Every instinct screamed at her that this summit wasn't a negotiation. It was a test, and possibly a trap. General Tovek of the Velar Dominion entered next, a pair of orbital marines flanking him in gleaming armor. He nodded to Tal, the barest acknowledgement of their shared vulnerability. Neither spoke for several long moments. "You think they'll come?" she asked finally. "They're already here," Tovek said, and pointed to the security display. The main feed had been hijacked. Not hacked, hijacked, as if the station itself had surrendered control. The screen now showed a static image, a simple Terran insignia etched in blood red against black. One word scrolled beneath it. Arrival. No dropships. No ships at all, as far as sensors could tell. And yet, 37 minutes later, the door at the far end of the hall hissed open. They came in without flourish. No banners. No music. Just footsteps. Measured, heavy reel. Colonel Marcus Rain stepped forward first, his aging exo-armor scorched and dented from Kepler's surface. Flanking him were 2 Terran soldiers, expressions unreadable behind their helmets. Their gear bore no lights, no markings, just steel and resolve. Rain removed his helmet and tucked it under his arm. His face was weathered but alert, eyes sharp and scanning. No ceremonial robes, no rank stripes. Only the ghost of a man who had outlived his century and still knew exactly what war cost. Tovek approached cautiously. Colonel Rain, he said. General, Rain replied. He inclined his head toward Tal. Commander. Tal eyed him like one might an unexploded warhead. You came without weapons? Rain gave a faint smile. Do I look unarmed? She did not answer. They sat at a hexagonal negotiation table in the center of the chamber. The Empire delegates took their places, posture formal but tense. Rain sat back in his chair, loose but never vulnerable. Tovek opened first. We acknowledge your actions on Kepler. We recognize that your forces are effective, if unorthodox. Rain tilted his head. Unorthodox. You've destabilized an active war zone without formal declaration. You've targeted strategic infrastructure that wasn't part of your original conflict. You've refused dialogue. Rain's eyes narrowed. No, we refused theater. Tal leaned forward. Then what do you want? Nothing, Rain said. That's what unsettles you, isn't it? No territorial claim. No alliance. No manifesto. We're not here to take. We're here to remind. Tal said nothing. Tovek exchanged a glance with her and then made the first move. He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim data prism. The Dominion is prepared to offer clemency, he said. Terran soldiers will be granted amnesty and assistance in reintegration. We have worlds where you're kind. Rain laughed. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the chamber like a blade. He didn't even touch the prism. Is this how you try to contain a storm? With paperwork? Tovek stiffened. It's a formal path to peace. There's no peace to return to, Rain said. You turn peace into propaganda. Turn soldiers into protocol. We are what happens when war is remembered too late. Tal's fingers tapped the table once, twice. Her voice dropped. Why now? Because the galaxy forgot what it feared. Because the dead stayed buried long enough for arrogance to bloom again. A long silence stretched between them. Then, Tal nodded toward one of her aides. He turned, as if adjusting equipment, but his movement was too sharp. Rain didn't flinch. I was hoping you'd try something. A click echoed under the table. A flash of steel. Then the aide jerked violently, a short blade embedded in his neck. One of Rain's soldiers had moved before anyone else registered the threat. Tovek rose to his feet, fury building. This was a peace table. Rain stood calmly. You made a grave. The chamber erupted. Sythari guards drew weapons, only to find the room's gravity fluxing, lights stuttering, air systems fluctuating. Somehow, the Terrans had compromised the station stabilizers. Rain didn't give the order. He simply turned toward his people and nodded. In perfect sync, they moved, not to kill, but to vanish. Within seconds, the Terrans were gone, dispersing into maintenance corridors, hidden paths, forgotten bulkheads. Alarms rang. Emergency lockdowns activated. And when the dust settled, all that remained on the table where Rain had sat was a small data shard. Tal picked it up with trembling fingers. Tovek leaned in, silent now. She activated it. A message played. Rain's voice, calm, direct, final. We don't seek war. We are war. Remembered. We are not here to conquer your systems. We are here to remind them why they were ever united. The screen went dark. Back on Kepler, 99X, the Terran troops regrouped at a hidden outpost deep beneath the crust, an old mining shaft they had converted into a mobile base. Rain sat alone in a dim alcove, staring at a flickering screen. Major Kale approached. They tried to kill you. He nodded. Of course they did. They'll send everything now. Full mobilization. They have to, Rain said. They've reached the edge of their logic. Now they'll default to fear. Kale stood beside him, gaze steely. What's the next move? Let them come, Rain murmured. They think they can crush us like a rebellion. But they don't realize we're not rebelling. We're fulfilling orders they buried with our generation. He rose, moving toward the command platform, the old symbols of Terran command still etched across its rusted surface. One word had been added in fresh ink. Legacy. Kale smiled faintly. Still think we're outnumbered? Always, Rain said. But that's how we like it. Far above them, the empires convened once more. Not to talk, but to plot. An emergency war council formed in hours. Strategies were drawn. New AI directives uploaded. Tactical nukes reassigned. They believed brute force could erase a myth. But myths don't die. Not when they wear armor and walk through fire. And deep in every Empire-controlled sector, rumors began to spread. Of old soldiers appearing where they shouldn't, of ancient weapons used with terrifying precision, of a force without allegiance or demand, striking only where pride had festered unchecked. It wasn't war as they knew it. It was memory, weaponized. And the galaxy began to understand. The Terrans had not returned to fight. They had returned to teach. Dust swirled beneath Kepler, 99 XS blood-orange sky as the final offensive began. The ground rumbled from the synchronized march of Empire war machines, tracked and hovering, weaponized and bristling with ambition. Above, the atmosphere crackled with the heat signatures of descending gunships, exo-stationed orbital artillery, and drone clouds blacking out patches of daylight. The united forces of the Velar Dominion and the Sythari Triumvirate had come together, not as allies, but as terrified predators circling a ghost that refused to vanish. On the command bridge of the Velar dreadnought Vigil's reign, General Tovek studied the synchronized formation with grim satisfaction. "They've boxed themselves in," he said. "We have them in a full pincer. North Crater and the Southern Trench are both blocked." A tactical officer replied without raising his eyes. "Satellite confirms Terran movement is minimal. No reinforcements, no visible assets. Just one battalion, holding the refinery ruins." "One battalion," Tovek echoed. "Against 3 legions." He wasn't smiling. Half a continent away, in the bowels of a shattered refinery, Colonel Marcus Rain stood before a sandblasted screen projecting an enemy density map. Red markers bled across the terrain like a spreading infection. A lesser mind would have seen it as inevitable defeat. Rain saw patterns, rhythms of war long buried beneath artificial intelligence and doctrine optimization. The empires had bet everything on mass and speed. They'd forgotten subtlety. They'd forgotten suffering. They'd forgotten humans. "Final wave's almost here," Major Kale said, checking her rifle. "Last chance to evacuate, sir." Rain turned, shook his head. "We don't run. We don't surrender. We remember. That's what makes us different." His team, weary but unwavering, locked and loaded. Some adjusted armor inherited from old wars, scarred with history. Others performed silent rituals, checking pictures inside helmet visors, muttering battlefield prayers passed down like blood. No music, no grand speeches, just purpose. The assault began with shock charges that flattened the upper levels of the refinery. Drones flooded in first, scanning for bio-signs, expecting chaos. Instead, they found silence, until electromagnetic pulses erupted from hidden relay nodes. Half the fleet of drones dropped lifeless, short-circuited midair. The second wave, exosuits and elite skirmishers, pushed forward, only to be met by mines, camouflaged tripwires, and makeshift traps repurposed from the refinery's ancient machinery. Explosions rang out in irregular rhythms, designed to confuse AI threat response. Rain and his soldiers emerged from sublevels with chilling coordination. Each move was honed by decades, centuries, of doctrine forged in the crucible of extinction. They did not waste bullets. They aimed for joints, visors, communication ports. They vanished and reappeared, bleeding the Empire's war engine dry by inches. Tovek's feed stuttered as reports came in from all sides. Heavy casualties, disrupted chain of command, jamming fields spreading across sector networks. The war room dimmed as chaos replaced calculation. "Pull them back," Tovek barked. "Regroup for an orbital strike." Before the command could be relayed, a new signal cut across all Empire channels. Unauthorized, unencrypted. Rain's face filled every screen, every visor, every projection. He wasn't triumphant, just steady, marked by soot and blood and the weight of duty. "This is Colonel Marcus Rain, Terran Legacy Corps. To the commanders watching this, we are not an army. We're not a nation. We are the price your peace forgot to pay. You traded memory for progress. You built walls around history, believing that what was buried would never return. You were wrong. In orbit, Admiral Ferox of the Sythari fleet clenched her claws. Cut the signal. No, Tovek ordered. Let him speak. Rain continued. We're not here to take your worlds. We're not here to reignite old empires. We fight only to remind you what it means to stand your ground. We're not conquerors. We are consequence. He looked off-screen, then back. We've held the line. That's all we ever intended. The transmission ended. Moments later, all resistance ceased. No more gunfire. No traps. No noise. When the last of the Sythari tanks pushed through the smoldering refinery gates, they found nothing but abandoned weapons, disabled comms, and ash. Kale led her squad through a maintenance shaft miles away, Rain behind her. They didn't speak until they breached the outer canyon wall. They'll be confused, she said. They'll be terrified, Rain corrected. They didn't beat us. They missed the point. The Terran Legacy Corps vanished into the wasteland, scattering like seeds into the galaxy's forgotten places. In the aftermath, Empire analysts combed every inch of the Warzone. There were no bodies, no identifiable gene tags, no records that matched active populations. Just fragments of gear, handwritten field notes, and tactical brilliance that defied simulation. The Empires tried to brand the humans as extremists, as anomalies, but the message had already spread. Small outposts in fringe sectors began recovering Terran military manuals buried beneath rubble. In training academies, cadets whispered about Rain Doctrine, the legendary commander who stared down entire empires and walked away. Children across systems began mimicking the chants of a Terran field code recovered during a firefight. Steel before surrender, shadow before shame, memory before mercy. In Sythari cities and Velar colonies alike, citizens began asking dangerous questions. Why did a force with no demands have such conviction? Why did their tactics feel so human and so familiar? In a quiet archive on the moon of Dralith, a young historian accessed the Terran files for the first time in over 5 centuries. She read about the Earth Wars, about the AI uprising, about the Legacy Corps' final stand, and she wept not out of fear but recognition. Humanity had not returned to reclaim what was lost. They had returned to ensure no one else forgot. And somewhere in a deep cavern on a backwater planet, Colonel Rain set down his rifle. He looked out across a valley that hadn't seen war in decades. The sky was still, the air thin. Kale sat nearby, repairing a shattered comm relay. We made our point, she said quietly. For now, Rain replied. They'll build new weapons, smarter machines, and they'll start to forget again. And when they do, Rain's expression didn't change. Then we remind them,